Hello everybody and welcome back to Zooming into Scripture. So today I have more of a philosophical style video for you guys that deals with an idea that is becoming more popular today, and I'm going to argue that it is a completely untenable position to hold in just 5 minutes. This position in its most simple form comes down to just two words, and everyone has heard this in today's world: my truth, or something like it, such as just speaking my truth. This form of thinking closely falls under moral relativism, which is defined by Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy as this. Moral relativism is the view that moral judgments are true or false only relative to some particular standpoint, for instance, that of a culture or historical period, and that no standpoint is uniquely privileged over all others. It has often been associated with other claims about morality, notably the thesis that different cultures often exhibit radically different moral values, the denial that there are universal moral values shared by every human society, and the insistence that we should refrain from passing moral judgments on beliefs and practices characteristic of cultures other than our own. But I'm going to argue that this idea has dangerous logical conclusions if consistently followed, and though people may believe morality can be relative to culture or time period, I'm going to also argue that people don't actually live this way, and I'll explain why. It is important to emphasize the importance of following the logical conclusions of moral relativism, or any worldview for that matter. I cannot overemphasize enough the importance of consistency, as this worldview, when followed as it is defined, leads to absolutely indefensible conclusions. So let's dig deeper into the implications of my truth thinking. Firstly, we encounter a huge problem right off the bat with this phrase. What is the truth? Is it changing and moldable? Can two contradictory moral truths be true simultaneously? The claim of subjective truth at face value violates the law of non-contradiction. Is it true that truth is subjective? Just think about those questions while we continue further. Also, just because we disagree about certain issues doesn't mean there isn't a true answer. Science is full of competing theories, but that doesn't mean that there is no true answer to be found. People often think that different cultures and laws around the world prove that moral truth is culturally driven and therefore relative to different people. Sounds tolerant and nice, right? Not so fast. If this were the case, then someone of one culture or time could never condemn the actions of another culture or time, as they would merely be following their cultural moral truths. History is full of examples of actions we Americans now condemn as morally evil that were well supported by the culture in question at the time, such as different genocides through history, the Holocaust, the Roman practice of exposure and abandoning children, kidnapping people into slavery, and many more. But none of these could be morally wrong if moral truths are derived from culture or popular opinion. We couldn't judge, for example, the Nazis at the Nuremberg trials for their own cultural moral beliefs on this my truth view of morality, as we have to forfeit any judgment of other cultures or people with this worldview. This doesn't mean that you can't disagree with the actions of another culture, but at the end of the day, all the moral relativists can say to be consistent in their worldview is to each their own, or you do you. Here's a few more examples to illustrate this point. In early America, slavery was rampant and well supported in large part. Africans were kidnapped and sold as less than human to be slaves for the profit of other people. Is this wrong independent of when or where it could have happened? What about genociding a whole people because a culture deems them undesirable? What about a culture where women can be abused by their husbands without penalty? No matter how absurd the example is, as Britannica states, relativism therefore deprives us of any means of raising moral objections against horrendous social customs, provided that those customs are approved by the codes of the societies in which they exist. As you can see, the consistent moral relativist, if such a person exists, finds himself in a tough position if they ever want to judge someone or another culture's behaviors and moral beliefs. In fact, there's nothing they can say. But I'm going to argue that they still do anyway, as I have never met a person who doesn't find some moral act wrong all the time, no matter when it happens or where. So if you're like me, before getting into all this and wondering like, who is this like a popular position? And you'd probably be surprised to find out that while I was researching for this video, I found a poll from Reddit posing this question, and a majority took a subjective view of morality. Now, this could be biased based on the subreddit or people who knew about this poll, but nonetheless, it shows that this view is held by people and it's becoming more popular. So if you're watching this video and you would call yourself a moral relativist, or you think morality is more subjective, I hope this shows you some of the logical conclusions, or the logical conclusions rather, that this worldview faces. You can't just pick some things you like as being objectively wrong and some things you don't like as being more subjective, which is what a lot of people seem to do who hold this view. But I want to be careful not to generalize too much. For these reasons, I believe it's very easy to conclude that moral relativism is false for the indefensible and horrific conclusions that it leads to if followed consistently. So if moral relativism can't be true because objective moral truths exist, where do they come from? And that's a great question. And that's exactly what I'm going to do on my next video in this series. So make sure to subscribe if you want to see that video. And if this video was helpful, I hope you leave a like, comment, tell me what you guys think. And I'll see you guys later.